Hi everyone, it's Meg from Permacoach and I'm back talking about how to make one of these beautiful rainbow rugs using a braided rug method. And I wanted to talk a little bit about fabrics. So you can use any fabric to make one of these rugs. You can even use plastic and make a weatherproof rug if you would like. I like to use stretch cotton fabrics. The reason is it's really soft and easy to work with. It comes in lots and lots of colours, and because it really is one of the massive waste issues that we have. This type of clothing is often available really cheaply. People wear it for a season and throw it out, and you can get lots and lots of it. So I don't like to use good quality clothing for rug making. I prefer to find things like this one. So this item has some holes in it, it has some stains on it, and this particular one has embellishment. I don't usually leave the embellishment on because it's going to, I don't know how that would work in a rug. It would be quite uncomfortable, so I'm going to cut those off. And you can see I've already used some of this in the rug. The first step to cutting things out is to remove all of your seams and hems. So I usually use scissors to do this. It's quite an easy process, but you can also use a board and a rotary cutter. So tip with a rotary cutter is make sure you're holding it the right way around, because if you hold, this is a little protective shield that stops you cutting yourself on, and they are quite sharp. So make sure you're holding it with your thumb on the outside panel. So a left-handed person would hold it that way and a right-handed person holds it that way. So the great thing about these is, as you can see, you can just slide them along something and it cuts your fabric nice and cleanly. But you do need to invest in a good cutting board, and these do wear out, so you need to replace them from time to time, whereas a good pair of dressmaking scissors will last you probably a lifetime, as long as nobody uses them to cut paper. And there is a special place in hell for people who use dressmaking scissors to cut paper. You're not going to need anything with a corner like that, so when you get to a corner you can just curve that out and keep cutting away. I don't throw these pieces out. There's some other rug making techniques that use smaller pieces. These also make fabulous cat toys. If you have a cat, they particularly like that type of toy. So everything, as much as possible, everything gets repurposed and used for something. When I do have waste, it goes into compost, because I'm usually working with cotton or with cotton viscose. There's a bit of a problem, there's a bit of a challenge when it comes to whether you use synthetic fabrics or not, because let's face it, if we don't reuse them, they're all going to landfill and they're all going to become microplastics. So it's probably a good idea to turn them into rugs. On the other hand, in order to make the rugs, we have to cut them up, and that makes microplastics. But life is full of these kinds of dilemmas, and we just have to do the best we can. So I won't keep cutting that out. I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from with that. Normally I would take all of these off and then lay it out flat. So here's one I prepared earlier, as they say in the classics. So this is a really good example of a fabric which is one-sided. This was a t-shirt. The other side had quite a big tear in it. So when you've got a one-sided fabric in particular, you need to think about which direction you want the curl to go. So just grab it by the corner and notice that if I were to cut the strips this way, it's going to curl so that I see this white side. Now that's fine, that might be what you're going for if you want that, but I actually want this lovely pink and orange, which means I want the curl going that way, and that means cutting in this direction. So I like to turn my board this way, because that way it's the best protection for the table while I'm cutting. And I find generally about a distance of about 5 centimeters or around 2.5 inches is a good width for rug making. The first thing I'm going to do is take that little point off because I'm not going to be needing that. Now it's perfectly fine to cut something with a little bit of a curve in it, but you don't want to go too sharply because the fabric will just pull apart. But something as gentle as that, not a problem at all. Now I like to use my finger as a guide. Stay calm, I'm not doing this. I'm staying well away from the end of my finger. But it's just I find if I don't use something as a guide, then I tend to get narrower as I move up the fabric, and other people who do this say that that's a common thing. So I'm just cutting and moving my finger up as I go, and that will give me a strip. When I get close to the end of the board, I can just move the fabric back down towards me, and I'm incorporating that shoulder into it. Now you can see there's a little bit of variation. That's not a problem. It's a little bit thinner in some parts. It's a little bit thicker. You're making a rug from repurposed fabrics. I'm sure there are people who will want to cut these so that they're all perfectly even, but for me it's just not such a big issue. I think the results are fine just going with something like that. So the next thing to think about is what do you do if you've got different thicknesses of fabric. So this is from an old polo shirt and it's considerably thicker than this fabric. All you need to do is to cut your strips a little narrower to compensate for that, or if it's very fine, a little bit thicker. So it's a good idea just to do a bit of a test strip, and what I'll often do is look for a section of the fabric that I can sacrifice for that. So I might just cut a little bit off there. So what I'm going to do with this little piece of fabric is to pull it out and then to compare it to my other strips to see how it goes in terms of thickness. That just gives you a good idea of whether you need to go a bit thicker or a bit thinner. Once again, you don't need to get panicky about this. If there's a little bit of variation between thickness in the rug, it's fine. Just don't go super thin. So I'll just show you what happens if you go really thin. Then this becomes almost like a thread. Having said that, this stuff's great for crochet. So if you want to make something for crocheting up a rug, you can use the same kinds of fabrics and just cut it thinner and stretch it and turn it into a ball and use it exactly like yarn. But for rug making, you're better off going with this thicker strip.